Hello, and welcome to this episode of Therapist Sanctuary. My name is Jen Westcott, and I am the host. And today I am interviewing someone I've known for a long time, really, but kind of not like consistently in your life, just hearing about you through your parents and yada, yada, like that, but off and on for a long time. We'll get into that. Um, and it's Rylee McKinley. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Jen.
Hi. And already I was like, I was nervous about, do we say how we met each other? Do we say, I always feel like I'm about to get in trouble for something, like, especially because I want to do this podcast for therapists, but also for people who've been to a lot of therapy or healed from something. And I had this rule in the beginning, like, okay, I won't have anybody on here that I knew in any capacity as a client. But I blew that within about the first episode because, like, ethically, you're not supposed to have these dual relationships. But you were not my client. Have never been my client. We just
No,
knew each other through various places that we both ended up, let's say.
exactly. It'd be a hard rule to stick to too, just because
I
yeah,
can't.
there's a lot of crossover.
There's crossover. Plus, I mean, you grew up here. It's a small place. And some of the people I know in multiple ways. So, yeah, if the therapy police are coming to get me to say you need to be taken to prison, I accept it.
Fair enough.
So, why don't we start with um, you telling me a little bit about who you are and like I know certain things about you, but I want you to feel comfortable to say whatever you want to share. Like I know you have been a spokesperson on mental health matters at various points in your life, but I don't know where that's at now. So why don't you start by just telling me the basics?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I haven't really thought about describing myself in a long time, but maybe it's a good thing to revisit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, basics would be maybe I'll go backwards. I'll start from now. Um, well, I live in West Kelowna now. I moved here, I want to say 7 years ago. I went to school at UBCO. But I grew up in Kimberley, which is where our stories cross paths.
Hmm.
Um, for when I first moved to the Okanagan, I was going to school, um, and this isn't very linear at all. Sorry.
That's okay. We can do it messy. It doesn't matter.
Okay. I guess, um, yeah, initially I really wanted to work in like kinesiology, and that was what I was going to school for here. But due to my life experience, which I'll get to as I go backwards, um, I started working in mental health here in Penticton, or well, I was living in Kelowna, but working in Penticton, and that crossed over with some of my advocacy and whatnot. And then, yeah, going backwards further, I guess my journey with mental health and therapy started in Kimberley when I was younger. So during my kind of high school years, had some struggles that then I was able to work on through therapy. And then um, after that, kind of use that experience to work in the advocacy space, which is again where our paths crossed.
Hmm.
So it's very,
It
very web-like.
it is. And
Yeah.
and now, yeah. We have to find a way to capture all the ways our paths have crossed because it is actually quite um magical to me.
Yes, and intricate and yeah, it is. I
And
feel like that was a weird way of explaining who I am, but
well, you can
more
start over.
okay. That was very
Okay.
geographical and
Okay,
experience
that
based,
was
but
the geographical version of Riley's life.
yeah.
Now we'll go to another version, chapter two.
Okay, chapter two, more into I guess like who I am as a person now and what I like. Um, I work in events, which I never thought I would, and it brings me so much joy. And that's something I don't think I've even talked to you about.
No, I didn't know
Um,
that.
yeah,
What
and
kind
that
of
just
events?
music festivals. So I work for a company here in Kelowna that puts on music festivals, and it started as they're friends of ours, and would kind of volunteer with them, and then I got a position, and I found my passion. And for now, I see life as being very,
Oh,
I plan on continuing to change and do lots of different things, work a million jobs in my life, but right now I'm really loving that. And my fiance and I, we got engaged last year, and we love to ski and spend time outside. We have a cat together. Um, we're I'm here right now in this beautiful kind of apartment that's a part of a house that we have a view of the lake. And
oh, nice.
lately, it's been feeling very much like, I don't know, life is really um, good lately, which is really, I'm very grateful to be
Wow.
able to say that. Um, yeah,
Because let's
because
dive into what makes it so good for it to be so good.
I guess, yeah, in comparison, where there's been times when life really wasn't good. Um, and not even so much as circumstance. I know people's struggles often kind of stem from either inner or outer or a combo of both. And mine was mostly, I mean, a little bit of outer, but I think a lot of just inner. And I've come to learn a lot of it just comes to on like chemical makeup, basically, and the way our brains are wired and work. And um, yeah, I have depression. I was diagnosed with depression when I was younger, and I still take medication for it. And actually, another thing I didn't tell you is recently I was diagnosed with ADHD, and that's been a big change in
Wow.
terms of like able to just kind of find ease and happiness. I'm taking medication for that as well. So
Wow. And did you notice like a big change when you started on treatment for that medication?
yes, oh my God, I thought I had clinical anxiety my whole life. I don't think I do. Honestly, taking ADHD medication has completely quelled that. I mean, I'll still get, maybe worked up about something or whatever, but just that kind of constant sense of dread is gone. And then it makes me think, I wonder how many other people, especially women, I think, because the more I learn about it is it's very underdiagnosed in women,
Yeah.
have the same thing. So
How did it come to be that you discovered you had ADHD?
it was pointed out to me actually when I started working in the event space. Again,
Because
I've
you were
learned that
doing a million things at the same time?
and the people that I work with kept saying birds of a feather flock together. And like when I first met some of them, they were like, "Oh, you have ADHD too, right?" And I was like, "Well, not that I know of, actually." I was like, "I have depression, and but I'm, I've got control of that, or it doesn't control my
Yeah.
life at all." And they'd say, "Oh no, like just based on our interactions, you for sure have ADHD." And then
Wow.
my dad has it too, and and it's a very genetic thing,
Very.
like so I thought, and then kind of looked, and then I just started kind of reading up on especially ADHD in women and all
Mm.
the kind of stuff. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. And then, yeah, I did a little kind of, my doctor was able to diagnose me, which was awesome. And we talked for like 5 minutes, and he was like, oh, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
I
but
think
that's
it
been
gets missed in women. I mean, I think so many things get missed in women because, well, that gets a bit philosophical, but sometimes I feel like because we don't create a big shit show about it, like we don't create the sort of outward trouble in school as much, or we tamp ourselves down better. And
totally.
that is not a good thing, but we learn to do that culturally. We're taught how to be, you know, nice and good and all that stuff that doesn't end up serving us. So we don't create any problems for anybody.
Totally. It's so much more like inward struggle. We're not sharing it with everyone
Yeah.
else, but it's all just turmoil all inside us. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Meanwhile, we're crying at night and can't figure out who we are and all of that.
totally. Yeah. So and that's only been I think I started medication for it in like October. So it's very, very recent.
Wow.
But I've just noticed a huge shift in my day to day. Um,
So
yeah.
take me back. Let's go back to the origins of when your struggles began and what that time was like and your journey into the world of helping professionals.
Yeah. I guess I feel like I've talked about this so many times, but it's been a while since I have. And since I've spoken about it last, I've learned new things about myself. So this is actually really interesting because I'm now looking at this that I've spoken about so much, but through a different lens, which is really cool. But
Yeah.
I guess from the time I was really young, and this is, I don't want to be a bummer or sad, but I mean,
Okay. It's real.
it's the nature of mental illness. But from the time I was young, like just kind of always having a feeling of sadness and just feeling forlorn, kind of, and never really knowing why. There was never really a reason always, but just kind of always being pretty down. And I'd have, moments of happiness, but overall, I just remember my kind of general feeling was just kind of one of, I guess, some anxiety, but also just kind of like sadness. I was just sad a lot.
Like
Um,
heavy, like that
just
sort of,
heavy, have
yeah.
feeling like the world was like, and as like my mom will talk a lot about, the conversations we'd have even when I was little, and I'd have be worrying about animals going extinct or these big problems that really a kid shouldn't really be needing to be burdened with. But
Right.
and again, always, we can diagnose things and say this is because of that and whatnot. And I've come to kind of just understand it as being a mix of like chemical imbalance, obviously, like serotonin um, production or uptake. Um, and some of that's genetic too. I think, depression runs in our family.
Mhm.
Um, and then personality type. And I don't know how deep you want to get with beliefs about past lives and stuff, but I've now thinking back, I think I definitely was still feeling ties to whatever my past life had been, which may have been heavy or hard.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, I feel like I've kind of forgotten, or the ties have lessened a little bit. So I don't feel as the heaviness from that life. Um,
Interesting you bring that up because I think that's an area in the world of therapy that therapists don't really go to, that spiritual belief system that, like, there's the kind of world of mental health, which is more of a medical world and toxin labels and pathology and issues to be fixed, if you want to put it that way. But there's a whole other world that I've never quite been able to mesh with that world of mental health, which is some children come, I think, to this experience with lingering experiences of either being connected to other things spiritually or in touch with things that other people aren't. And it can very easily be labeled through a lens of pathology when really they're very highly sensitive, intuitive children.
it's funny you say that because that's something I've struggled with throughout my whole journey, basically, is finding that Venn diagram of, yeah, the pathology and the kind of clinical side of things, which is helpful and valid in a lot of ways. Like I keep kind of saying the chemical imbalances and stuff, like
Mm.
that's real, the way these human
Right.
vessels work, like our brain is an organ, and the same way that we can, people can have diabetes, we can have
Right.
depression, just where an organ is not functioning optimally, and it can be treated with whatever. But like you said, there's a crossover for sure. And so it's always been really, that's always been, I shouldn't maybe say struggle. It's been an interesting journey trying to make sense of all that. And
Right. And who do you talk to about that? Because right away, when you talk about that, people are like, oh, woo woo. Like,
I was literally, the word woo woo comes up all the time. And I feel like it's hard as counselors too and
it
clinicians
is.
because you're held to a certain standard of practice
Mhm.
um, and wanting to give best care. So I've talked about it with a few counselors, and yeah, and they often say, they're like, yeah, well, I think about this stuff, but I there's no manual on how to
Right.
give advice on past lives, or that kind of stuff. So it's kind of one
Right.
or the other. You either go to like a spiritual type person who has that kind of view,
Yeah,
or it's hard to find the middle.
it
Um,
is. We aren't
not
there yet. Maybe we will be one day.
exactly, especially when that spiritual stuff isn't really like validated in science. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, that was just kind of growing up, and then got into middle school, teenage age, and um, I just those feelings of sadness kind of snowballed into more feelings of, again, I haven't even said this in a long time, but it was a big, like, this was what my life was marked by as a young person, was just really strong self-hatred. I just hated myself, and for no particular, again, reason. I hadn't done anything horrible, or
Mhm.
I was lucky to, not lucky, but there was no really traumatic event in my childhood or anything that would have caused those strong feelings, but they just kind of started to grow and grow. And I thought some of it was kind of normal, as a middle schooler, you're
Right.
insecure and have,
Angst.
maybe you don't love yourself, angst, but it went beyond just looks. It was just like I felt like I truly just hated myself to the core. And then it kind of compiled into, feeling suicidal. And it was around this time, obviously, my parents were starting to worry because I talk about certain things. And um, I think the first time I went to counseling for the very first time, I want to say I was 13, and a stubborn 13-year-old angsty girl, I was not having it. Like,
Not happening.
no, it was more my mom took me and I was like, this is, yes, I'm not partaking. Like, I don't,
Good for
whatever.
you.
Well, yeah, I feel
You
bad for my
gotta
mom
be
now.
you gotta be ready though.
Exactly. And she was just, trying to say, somebody help me.
Yeah.
But so I think, yeah, then some time passed between that initial effort. And then those feelings kind of all culminate into the development of an eating disorder where I just, you look at classic case of kind of um, having trouble at school with friends, having those inner feelings, playing kind of high level sports. So that's another factor that all kind of contributed to developing habits, which eventually the official diagnosis with that anorexia nervosa, but with components of, I don't know if they still call it this, but anorexia athletica, but just like over exercising.
Yeah.
So food restriction, over exercising, obsessing about food.
Right.
And then that all culminates into weight loss. And so it was during this time, I think, where our paths first crossed because um, just seeking, my parents obviously were seeking support
Hmm.
because it was both, it's a biosocial physical disease. So there's the
Right.
weight
That
loss, but then
medical part and the psychological part and yeah.
yeah, and then that I guess that was kind of where heavy involvement in therapy and treatment started because I kind of had no choice at that point. It was like
Yeah.
I was very sick, and so and that journey definitely kind of was the precursor to me getting involved later during my recovery about wanting to advocate and just thinking back to younger me and if I had maybe thinking if I had had some more information or some more support, um, I don't know, maybe I still would have gotten sick again. I don't know.
I know. We don't like that's the thing. No one has the corner on the human condition.
No,
No one knows if it's nurture or nature or chemicals or biology or environment or trauma or I think going back to something you said though, sometimes I wonder if it's harder on people that can't put their finger on anything traumatic. Their family life is they're not unhappy in their family. They have good supportive people in their world. Like that must bring its own level of kind of torture, trying to figure out why am I feeling this way?
definitely. And like I think, yeah, it was just kind of another little thing added onto it of just kind of feeling, why am I doing this? Like I must be choosing this because
Oh, I
why
hate
else
that.
why else would it be happening? And so that's
Isn't
just
that,
another
oh
thing to
my God.
contend with.
There is nothing I hate more than the idea that someone is just making choices that aren't good for them.
Yeah.
Why would anybody do that? Why would
And that was the
anybody
question
do
always,
that?
why, from counselors, from my mom, everyone, why would you? And I'm like, I don't know. And again, it just comes back to I don't know, but
Right. But it was real. Maybe it didn't matter why. It just it's what was.
yeah,
So
it just happened.
tell me a story about, I don't know, take me through a time of that time when you first started in counseling, what it was like.
Um, I just remember being very angry at that time. Still, now I'm probably, let's say 15, 14, 15, and now I'm an angsty, depressed teen with anorexia who is now underweight, brain is starved. I'm clinging to these behaviors, which are causing me to be sicker. But for me, they're the only thing that make me feel like I'm in control. And so now I'm sitting in a counseling office and I'm having this person tell me, you need to stop doing these things. I'm pissed. I was super mad. I was mad my parents were forcing me to be there. I was mad someone was trying to control me, take away this one little thing that I felt like
Was the
was
solution?
that made me feel good. I felt, the only time I
Yeah.
felt good was when I was biking up the ski hill or going for a run or, you know, any of the
Right.
behaviors. So yeah, the first little bit was just really angry. Um,
Did you have,
and not wanting to be better. Like again, I didn't want to be better.
right,
So I wasn't going in there with the goal of like, yeah, let's work through some stuff. I was like, I just need to get through this appointment so that I can go do my behaviors.
right. And you're not having any of it.
No,
What do you recall what helped or didn't help at that time when you didn't want to be there and were forced to go to these appointments with various people, I would imagine? What was it that any of them did or didn't do that was helpful? That's a convoluted question, but see what you can
no,
make.
it makes sense. In the early stages, honestly, I don't know if there was anything anyone could have done that would have made me, I was just
Right.
so, and again, that comes to the biological part of it too. I was so starved and so unbalanced and um there was no reasoning. Um, But as we got further, like a little bit into recovery, and basically, like the thing that kind of got me to start buying in was basically just if the sooner I can get through this, they'll stop being on my ass and I can get back to, sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot to ask if we can say swears.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Well, I can roll it back if we're not supposed to.
No, don't worry about it.
Um, but yeah, truly, like the first thing, like reasoning that had me buy in was just okay, I'll just, if I can go along with this a little bit, then they'll leave me alone and I can get back to doing my stuff. But in doing that, I did start to get a little bit better, like following the meal plans, going to the nutritionist, eating a little bit more regularly, then it starts to shift. My brain is functioning a little bit more reasonably and I can actually maybe kind of step back and go, "Oh, maybe this isn't the best thing for me. Maybe I should, buy in a little bit and try for recovery." Um, and then kind of I'd have those glimmers, those moments where it was kind of like, okay, yeah, I don't want to be like this anymore. It's running my life. I want to just be normal and be able to think about something other than my input and my output. And so when I was in those headspaces, those therapy sessions were a lot more productive. And so having someone kind of encourage me in that headspace of we can do this, like let's do this together. You can recover. Just kind of painting a picture of life beyond the illness was
Mhm.
helpful. But like I said, those moments were punctuated by periods of just like F off. Like I don't
Right.
want help. I don't want to get better. So
And when you were, I mean, I'm so excited to talk to you that I have a million questions, but I have to calm down. But I really,
that's okay.
really want to know because I think a lot of therapists want to know kind of what lands and what doesn't. So when we're with someone who is very angry and is showing up but hates it, what did you appreciate from the person? Like, did you prefer if they just kind of joined you in it and said, "Yeah, I get that you're pissed off," or did you have the soft approach? Like, what was the best way? Did you find?
I like being joined in it. I had one person that I saw that they were like, yeah, be pissed. Like I would be too. And I think
Yeah.
they had had experience with a similar an eating disorder. Um, and so yeah, they kind of just let me be mad. They're like, yeah, what else are you mad about? Like tell me about it. Like and that kind of let me get riled up. Just having someone try to calm me down in those sessions would sometimes just be the worst. It's
Right. You just get more mad.
exactly, but having just being allowed to be mad and kind of be asked like, why are you mad? Yeah, tell me about it. Like, what else are you mad about? And then sometimes that would let me get that energy out, and then yeah, just felt a little bit more seen by that person.
Right.
And then sometimes after that would lead to a more productive conversation. And sometimes it
Mhm.
would even allow me to see like how unreasonable I try to think of it as how unreasonable the disorder was being. That was a big thing too. This is more specific to eating disorders, but
Yeah.
separating the disease from the person. So having
Yeah.
almost personifying the disease of like, what is the disorder? Like, why does the disorder want you to do this? Or like almost like it was controlling me. So I wasn't making the choices to do this stuff, but it's making me almost thinking of it as like a parasite
Right.
or whatever. And that actually helped me a lot once I started to see it as like something
Separate.
separate than myself.
Well, and I would imagine because it takes the shame out of it, that it's not you. It's not you that's this angry, and it's not you that's making choices.
Yeah, not me that's yelling at my mom and saying horrible things to
Right.
my mom, and yeah, it took the shame. And then it also made it so that it was now it's me and my team, my family and the professionals helping me against this thing rather than all of them against me.
Oh,
It
wow.
was like it allowed me to step onto the other side. And now we're all working together to try to defeat this thing. Um, that was a big shift. And I wish I could remember when or exactly when that shift happened. It was a counselor though that said that. They said this isn't you. These thoughts, these urges to do this stuff, it's not you. It's the disease, and you have the disease. It's in you,
Mhm.
but you're not choosing this. So that was the biggest shift in my recovery by far.
Wow. And so often I think when we recover from things, there might be moments we remember, but I mean, it was the same for me. I don't know if I ever shared with you that I had struggled with an eating disorder too for years. And it's like when I look back on when did it change for me, it's so often not one big blast of catharsis, like, oh, I've seen the light. It's these sort of little incremental building. But I do remember one therapist said to me, I struggled with bulimia. And I remember one session, he looked at me and he said, what is it exactly you're trying to get rid of? And it really hit me he, like somehow he got that this was symbolic and this was something that I needed to do. So that was honoring of the solution I came up with that I thought worked, but it went deeper than that into like how is this serving you? This is serving something, and that helped me so much. Then I
Wow.
wasn't just a loser that couldn't get over it or like what's
Yeah,
wrong with me? I'm smart. Like why can't I make better choices like that? I that would have never worked on me ever. Would have made me feel so much shame.
yeah.
So,
Connecting it to that, like you said, connecting it to that it is something deeper. It's not just the surface level behaviors and
yeah.
the surface level goal of what everyone thinks. Oh, you're, losing weight or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that can be a part of it, but it's definitely never the root.
And like you said about anger, sometimes I think what the therapy provides is a place to hear yourself talk about it. And then you kind of go, oh my God, did I say that? Like, what the
Yeah,
hell? That.
totally.
Because
Yeah.
where else do you really get into saying all the things going on, right?
Yeah, I was just saying it and not saying it to someone. Like more like I mean to someone, to the therapist, but more just kind of saying it into space
It's
rather
not
than
the
trying to
same.
yeah, rather than trying to convince someone of something, which was at all my other conversations were trying to convince my mom to let me go for, do whatever.
Right.
So yeah. And like you said, no big, I mean, that one, the separation of self and disease was a big shift. But like you said, that it wasn't like from then on out, it was like, all right, it's all of us against this. And I'm on board 100%. Like you said, it was
Yeah.
lots of little
It's,
things over time.
and I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, I don't know if I can ever say, yeah, it's over. Like it comes back, it resurges like out of nowhere. I feel like I'm always on this sort of like boat on the water with an eating issues. Like there's moments where it's present and there's other times I think, wow, I haven't even thought of that for like years. And then all of a sudden it's right there.
Comes up. Yeah. And then you're almost like mad because like, what the? I thought
I
I
know, I thought
squashed this. Like,
yeah, I thought this was over. Yeah. And those moments maybe get fewer and far between, but yeah. keeping it real, I don't think I ever felt like, okay, I'm never going to have to deal with this again. It's done. Yeah. So
Well,
then what happened? Like you got into some good recovery and then what, take me through what happened, like kind of when you moved into this world of advocacy, what that was like.
um, well, like you said, it wasn't like I'm just recovered now. It was definitely recovery is a long period. But the acute recovery was kind of over by the time I was 17. I'd been gone to hospital and gotten to a healthier weight and but still was very much in treatments, still very much seeing therapist and nutritionist and dietitian for I think 2 or 3 years after the
Mhm.
hospital. But during that time, even while I was still in like fairly acute recovery, fairly acute treatment, like outpatient, um, we had moved. So while I was in hospital, my family, there were lots of things that fed into it, but we had just decided ultimately that um, our hometown wasn't the place to be anymore for our family. And so it was while I was in the hospital at BC Children's, my parents and sister packed up and moved to Penticton. And so then I got admitted living in Kimberley and then was got discharged and boom, we're in Penticton now. And it was
Wow.
kind of, it worked a little bit while that I was in hospital over the summer. So I was able to start school in September and I just decided to not tell my new classmates where I had just been. I didn't want to be like, hey, guess where I've been for the past 2 months.
Right.
Like,
It gave you like
um,
a fresh start.
so it was kind of a blessing in that way. And so, yeah, didn't really, I was still in this recovery, but didn't tell anyone about it and that was my grade 11 year. And then come my grade 12 year, things started to shift a little bit more where I kind of felt like maybe a little bit of guilt for almost like all these people that I've made friends with. And they were all so lovely. And I was very lucky to build some really strong relationships at that school. Just felt almost kind of like, oh, I feel bad that they don't know the whole me. And I've been a bit, I haven't been able to maybe build as deep of relationships as I could have because I've been holding this part of me back. And I decided to just start talking about it. And I was in this class, leadership class, where we were encouraged to um, be leaders, try to organize events at school, bring people together, community events, volunteering, all kinds of stuff. And so me and some of the other kids had decided to do like a mental health week. And this is back in like 2014, where the talk about mental health, it was getting there. We were starting to it was getting a bit more into
Yeah.
and it's weird to think back, like now it's so much in our lexicon. We're always talking about mental
Yeah.
health and wellness, but even like that was only 10 years ago and we still weren't really talking about it a whole ton. And so
Yeah.
we did this mental health week. And as part of that, we had speakers and stuff. And I went up and just told my story. Like, was
Wow.
like, yeah, I just felt like I needed to just do it. And I felt so supported. And after doing that, I just felt so heard and supported by everyone. None of my relationships changed. If they did, it was for the better.
Oh my
You know,
God.
no one was like, oh, weird. Like, I don't know, like
And
the fear that we all have.
that's the fear, like the fear. Oh yeah, I really resonate with that. Like that thing about, it's private and it's so vulnerable. And yet, if you don't let people in on it, then they only ever know part of you because it's such a big part of our lives, whatever our story is, right? Yeah, I
Exactly.
relate to that, but it always feels like I'm pulling my pants down in public and risking everything. I'm waiting for
Exactly.
someone to say, "Oh my God, are you kidding?" Like, no, thank you.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
or you think we care? Like you think we care about that? Like who care? Like, that was kind of my big thing, just thinking, why would anybody care? Like, but they did. And thank God for that, because that was kind of what led into, I don't even know what like the next event after that was kind of, but I think because there's two high schools. So I think someone had asked if I'd come and talk at the other school. And part of that class I was in was learning how to do public speaking and whatnot. And
Mm.
um, so I did that. And then I don't even know how the next thing happened, but then all of a sudden I was on my mom and I started doing some stuff together. There
Mhm.
were different like government initiatives and local government and provincial government. Um, at that time they were putting a lot of money into improving services for youth and families.
Yeah.
Um, and so we were very blessed and lucky to be able to be a part of those as kind of parent and child voices. Um, and then it
Amazing.
just, yeah, and that honestly, that fed into my recovery a lot because it felt like I was being held accountable. Here I am going and telling all these people about my journey and whatever. I was like, I can't very well just go back to my old ways.
Right.
So
Someone might notice.
yeah, so I kind of just, and definitely, like you said, have those the slips. Recovery isn't linear by any means, but it definitely just added to that feeling of accountability and just envisioning a life for myself beyond that identity because it was a big part of my identity.
Yeah. Well, and it takes every ounce of energy and thought life to recover for a
Oh
long
God.
time. Good reminder. Ah, I just want to say, okay, I just have to tell this story because um, it's amazing to me. So, in the beginning, you crossed paths through a service that I was involved with. I wasn't directly involved with you, but I got to know your family because of that. And then I knew when you moved. And then we decided where I was to try and do something different for kids with eating disorders. And so that was created here. And you and your mom came and spoke at a big event that we put on. And it was such
Yes.
that alone to me was such a full circle moment as a therapist to see someone that I had watched struggle, watched not have the best sort of service because of where we were at development wise, and then come back and help us launch this better service in a town that you grew up in. That would have been enough. But then it just got better. And
Yes.
then we were involved in some speaking things together at the same events, and I would see you over the years and talking about mental health. And it just was wonderful to watch you like develop and grow up and all of that. And then guess what? Someone in my family struggles with an eating disorder. And guess who I got to phone? Your mom.
Talk about full circle.
Oh my God. And I was just able to really from the other side of it, from a lived experience of watching a loved one go through it, like cry with your mom and be totally lost and totally like, I don't know what to do. And she was wonderful. And now your mom and I are running a parent support group together. Like, that's like TV.
Literally, it is. It's crazy. It's
Crazy.
incredible.
It is. It's special.
I'm
It's like,
happy you brought that up because again, the journey is so scattered, but I love that. That's a really nice way of seeing the circle and how it all came together.
yeah.
And if again we're saying why did things happen, whatever, if the reason, you and I, our family members have gone through what we've all gone through, if the reason for that was so that we were able to establish these services for other people,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
that's something. That's not nothing. And I'm so grateful that you and the team behind these programs that have been set up in the area are happening. It's absolutely incredible.
I think in the field in general, I think we've come a long way with eating disorders in particular. Like when I went to school 25 years ago and was learning to be a therapist, there was this feeling around eating disorders of like nobody knows how to help. It's like this sort of black hole of hopelessness, and we don't know what to do, and the person doesn't get better. And it is not like that anymore. We know how to intervene. Thank
Wow.
God. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, even just in like, so after doing like advocacy work, I mentioned briefly, so I got an actual not actual job, a paid job at
Hmm.
a place in Penticton as a peer support worker. So, and they basically called that non-clinical therapy. So I don't have the schooling to offer like official
Oh,
therapy, but I was kind of the conduit between the youth and then the rest of the services that we offered,
so
but
good.
also could listen to them and hear them. I wasn't giving
Yeah.
them real advice, but um, And yeah, even just working in that space, and that was 4 years ago, just noticing how far this is like everything has come. It was very,
Yeah.
very rewarding to see.
Heartwarming. Yeah.
Yes, hopeful because yeah,
Hopeful. Oh, if there's one thing we need, it's hopefulness. Yeah.
exactly.
So, what else is there? You're happy, you're living life. I mean, nobody's happy all the time, but life is good.
Life is good right now. And I wanted to say a little bit when you had shared your about your experience in the past. And I do remember we had spoken about that briefly, never gotten into it a ton, but I was aware of that. And I think that's part of the reason why our bond has lasted for so long. Just I don't know, there's
Mhm.
a different bond between people with shared experiences, you know, you
Yeah.
just you know that they understand on a deeper level. But when it came to like relapse for me, especially in the past few years, I've been lucky enough to not struggle with that, but definitely needing something. So for many years it was like pot. Like I smoked pot a lot for a long time after recovery. And at that time, I used to think like they should have just given this to me in the hospital. If they wanted me to eat,
Right.
I should have just been getting pot all the time.
Believe me, therapists have had that idea too for a long time, but it feels like a little like we're not allowed to say that, but we're like, we really have a little pot. They order a pizza. It's not all bad.
Yeah, literally, I'm like, oh, so. But anyways, yeah, I struggle with that for a while. And again, I kind of I've come to learn that I forget who it was. Somebody, I don't know if it was a poet or somebody, but they wrote about how we all have like a hole inside us. You know, we have this like the black hole,
Yes. The
and we're
God
always
hole.
trying, yeah, we're always trying to fill it with something. Um, and I think, yeah, I've kicked that habit now, which is nice. And sometimes it served me in the past, but it didn't always. And yeah, I think I just wanted to say that it hasn't all just been like roses and whatever. And
Right. Yeah.
um, that hole exists. And but I just think we get better and better at learning how to fill it with things that aren't um, that don't make it bigger, I guess, or don't hurt
Right. That
us.
don't like give us a new set of problems that we have to solve.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what I'm trying to see it as now is it's there, but we can continue to
Oh,
get better.
yeah, I totally hear you on that. And I have had that hole in my soul as well and tried to fill it with all kinds of things, including at times over exercise and eating disorders. And then alcohol for me was a big one. And when I went into recovery and joined support groups for that and got into sobriety, I heard people talk a lot more about it being a God hole, that there's something in us that, and it's not the religion part of it, it's more that spiritual. It's kind of circling back to what we started with. Like there has to be something spiritual that goes in that place too, for that's what I've learned, for it to really stick, because it's deeper than just behaviors or take a warm bath I mean, I could fucking do every self-care activity and then still want to drink a liter and a half of wine. Like there
Yes.
had to be something more that could fill this feeling that I would physically feel. And I could never really quite put my finger on what that feeling was. I thought, is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it craving? Is it, and I think it was that spiritual hole in my soul. Who knows why? I mean, I have my theories, but it's part of the human condition, I think.
Yeah, and on the like it's on the other side of the clinical thing, like we said, so can't
Hmm.
be filled with anything of this realm. We gotta it's gotta
Hmm.
be other stuff, connection to and yeah, stuff that we can't see.
Connection.
Connection to each
Connection,
other,
period.
connection to
Yeah.
nature, connection to the earth, but
Yeah.
easier said than done sometimes.
Oh my God. I know. We have to work it, right? Okay. I have a little game that we play at the end. Are you ready? It's called word
Yes.
association.
Okay.
So I say a word and then you just tell me the first word that comes into your head.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to go with what comes into my head.
Okay.
Soccer.
Ball,
Food.
pizza,
Recovery.
me,
Depression.
depression, Prozac,
Fear.
alone,
Connection.
mom,
Vulnerable.
child.
Hope.
Now.
Let's end on that. Thank you so much. This was so great. I could talk to
Thank
you
you,
all
Jen.
night. I
Me
could.
too. I know. I'm like, what's your time limit? But yeah, well, maybe we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, let's do it again. There's
With or
lots
without
more
the
to
recording.
say. Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Some of each.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here, and we will sign off there.